I think I mentioned to you I'm on a mailing list from the guy that teaches and pretty much was a guru of negotiation, Chester Karras. And one of the articles they just sent out, I mentioned it the other day, patience, the super tactic. And we've been talking about that a little bit. Many people approach negotiation like a ping pong game. One side serves, then the other, a few quick slashes, concessions, and then it's done. He goes on to say that patience is very powerful, more powerful than a deadlock or a threat. To do it right, it takes time to understand the issues, weigh risk, test the other party's strengths, find weaknesses, know what they want, change expectations. It takes time to discover what the other party really wants, and patience gives the other party and the organization time to get used to the idea that what they wish for must be reconciled with reality. So it just says both parties have an opportunity to find out how to best benefit each other. Before a negotiation begins, it's not always possible for either party to know how to best resolve the problems. And I think that's very true. A lot of times we have, and we'll talk about today, it fits right in, we'll have perceptions of how we think a negotiation is going to go, but it doesn't always turn out like that. You can script and try to make it go the best you can, but it's not always going to work like that. And that's why good negotiators have that ability to change and kind of react. But what gives you that ability, and that's patience. If you'll just kind of take a step back, don't get in a big hurry. All right, so the things we're going to talk about today: perception, cognition, and which is a subset of framing, and cognitive biases and emotion. All right, so perception. What's perception?
Basically just a personal like outlook on how you see something.
Is it always true? Okay, but what's the problem if it's not true?
It's true to that person.
It's true to that person. So you got to change somebody's perception. And I get a real quick story. We in the business we served French fries, and so under the heat lamp we used to keep them for I don't know maybe 3 minutes, and then we'd really try to throw them out just because they don't keep. You guys get cold fries; they're not any good. So I got a call one night at the restaurant. And the lady said, I just came through your drive-through and got home to eat and my fries are cold. And I go, okay, well, just if you can come back, I'll cook some fresh for you and replace them for you. She goes, well, I live in Hermitage. That's 15 miles from my store. Now, I throw them out after 3 to 5 minutes under a heat lamp. What are the odds of those things traveling in a bag 15 miles and being hot when she gets home?
Not likely.
Not likely at all. But would I have accomplished anything by arguing with her? No, because what? Her perception was that those fries were cold in that bag. And I said, okay, I'm going to leave a note with my manager, and you're going to get a free combo next time you come back. And you guys have heard the customer's always right? Is the customer always right?
No.
What I told my people was the customer's not always right, but they are always the customer. And we kind of had a slogan, don't fight, make it right. And in my business, it's easy. I had somebody ask me before, well, how far do you go to make a customer happy? Well, what's it cost for me to give away a combo meal of fries? $2, okay? If you're in a high dollar business, can you give away $10,000 worth of stuff to make somebody happy? No, so it's kind of relative, but in my business, think about how far. And then one thing to keep in mind too, and I always kind of have this philosophy, and you guys get aggravated sometimes when people mess up your order or do stuff like that. It happens, it's going to happen. Anytime people are involved, mistakes are going to happen. What I try to focus on more is what they do after they make the mistake. To me, that's a mark of people that I want to do business with. I understand mistakes are going to happen. The question is, what are you going to do about it? All right, so perception, the last thing there, it's reality to the person who believes that. And that's why you can be as right and know you're right, but if the other person doesn't believe you, it doesn't really matter. So that's why you gotta understand perception. Very, very critical. Okay, so here's how you remember this. S-A-R-T-B. It's not S-T-A-R-T, but it's S-A-R-T-B. And this is kind of your progression that goes through. It's got to be some kind of stimulus. That gets your attention. Now I recognize, now I translate it, and then that shapes how I act. Okay, so that's just kind of the cognitive process of how we go through before we behave, before we act, and it's SART-B, S-A-R-T-B. All right, so 4 major errors that happen, and we'll go through all of those. First is called stereotyping. It's a common distortion when an individual assigns attributes to another solely on basis of the other's membership in a particular social or demographic category. So what are some stereotypes? Frat boy? Is that a stereotype? Yeah. Blondes? Okay. I'm from Wakulla County, or not from there. I own property in Wakulla County. What's the Wakulla County stereotype? You guys know where Wakulla County is? No?
Good old boys, rednecks.
Rednecks, there you go. You guys don't know Wakulla County? If you don't have a gun, they'll give you one? What's that?
I go through Wakulla County all the time.
I love Wakulla County.
It's great.
It is. They just don't like a lot of folks down there. Nothing wrong with that. All right, so what's wrong with stereotyping? Yeah, not everybody fits into that group, but is it easy to do? Yeah, very easy. College kids, millennials. How about the big stereotype? You guys like being called a millennial?
No.
Well, you are one.
It depends on how you say it.
I don't like the associations.
Okay. You're a millennial. Based on the definition, if you're born between this age, you're a millennial. So that shouldn't bother you. What should bother you is the stereotyping of millennials, because not all of you fit into that category. But you all get pretty much labeled that. Okay, so be careful. All it is be careful stereotyping. Halo effect. Once again, something that can really misconstrue, I think, your perception of something. It's when you base your opinion of something based on one attribute. So in the past, I've worked at a place, we had a receptionist, and she was absolutely outstanding to the customers, to the guests, and everything. Everybody loved her, but she was horrible administratively. And it caused a burden on a lot of the other employees there that had to come behind and pick up the slack. But she was viewed as an outstanding employee based on one attribute. And that's really the only one a lot of times people see was the customer service side. So be careful about that. Selective perception. This is a really good one. Says that we here, basically, we single out information that supports our belief, but filter out stuff that we don't believe. You guys do that? Why do we do that?
I like to be right.
Yeah, we want to validate the fact that we're right. Is that healthy, though? What's going to help you make a better decision?
Doing the opposite.
Information on both sides, understanding where I'm right and where I might be off base. And it's hard. One of the things, too, is when you guys, especially in entrepreneurship, if you're going to decide to go out and start your business, you need to have a really, really objective view of your abilities. Is that hard to do? You guys think you're good at everything? You got to be willing to admit if you don't, you're going to fail. And same thing I will tell you about negotiation. Some of you guys are going to take this class. My goal is to get you guys engaged in negotiation, get you guys to like it, get you guys to be good at it. Some of you guys are at the end of this class are going to just not like to negotiate. It's fine. It's your personality. You can't change that. So why is it okay?
You gotta be okay being comfortable.
Yeah, you got to be the best you can be. Then what do?
Get someone else.
You hire somebody who can do it. Same thing. I consulting for a young man that was just a great tech guy. He was a sales guy, had a great product. He was a horrible operations guy, and ended up running his business. And he could have hired one key employee and saved his whole business. So that's what I'm saying. People have a hard time sometimes admitting where your weaknesses are. And to me, to be successful, I've always said you got to be smart enough to know you're dumb. And then be willing to admit that. And I think it's hard sometimes. People, we have an inflated ego of ourself and our ability. And that's, to me, it could be a recipe for failure. Last one, projection. This happens, arises out of the need to protect our own self-concept. So what we do is we assign to others the characteristics or feelings that we possess. So we think because I feel this way, then you should feel this way. I like when you guys buy somebody a gift, you buy something based on what you think they'd like, or you buy something that you like that's cool, and so if I like it, it must be good, so I'm sure you'll like it. That's projection. All right, frames. Kind of how we shape things. So they're the subjective a lot of times. The mechanism through which people evaluate and make sense, lead us to pursue or avoid actions. They shape the world around us. They make sense of complex realities, define a person, event, or process, impart meaning or significance. And so my note on it, okay, once again, no test question from that, just a list of things. But look at my note. Because disputes are often unclear and open to different interpretations as a result of differences in people's backgrounds, personal histories, and experiences, frame gives us a way to label these different interpretations. So we're taking all the information we know and putting it into a little box that we understand, and that's called framing. All right, so there's different types of frames that we'll talk about. Substantive. What the conflict's about, people have a disability. So this is the key issue. If it's a substantive frame, it's about, we're talking about what's the key issue. An outcome frame, that is what we expect to achieve at the end of the negotiation. More likely, and if you're in the outcome part, then more likely it's going to be a distributed negotiation, because what am I worried about?
Your outcome.
My end deal, what I'm going to get. Aspiration, predisposition towards satisfying a broader set of interests, that's more likely to be an integrated negotiation. I care about you, but I also care about myself. Once again, definitions, no definitions. Process, how will we go about it? What are the steps from A to Z? What time frame will we allow? Where will we meet? What issues will we discuss first, etc. Identity, how the members define who they are, gender, religion, place of residence. So when somebody asks you about yourself, what's the first characterization or identity that you say?
It kind of depends on how you connect with that person.
Okay, what are some you use then?
Where you're from?
Yeah? Location?
A big thing for me is like my word is bond.
Okay.
Feel like
Integrity?
That's, people like to hear that, right?
Yeah.
But only if it's true.
College student? Okay. Floridian? So there's a lot of ways that you can portray yourself, some more favorably than others. All right, characterization. How a party defines the other party. So projection is how I define myself and project out to you. Characterization is how a party defines the other party. And so, and then loss gain, how the party defines a risk or reward associated with a particular outcome. And so the note is, after buying a car, you can look at it two ways. You can look at it like I just gained an asset, or you can look at it like I just spent $10,000. And those are two different frames for the same purchase. So in my notes, in conflict, identity frames yourself tend to be positive. How about that? We think positively of ourselves, while characterization frames tend to be negative, what we think of other people. And that's just a lot of human nature. All right, so how do frames work? Negotiators can use more than one frame. Mismatched frames between parties are sources of conflict. If you frame something one way, your opponent frames it another. People negotiate differently depending on the frame. Specific frames used within certain types of issues. Particular frames lead to particular agreements, and parties likely to assume a frame because of various factors. And so in the book, they tell a story about a golf course. A developer wants to expand on the golf course, and so that's the substantive issue. His preference is to fill the wetland, which is outcome, and how much input the neighbor should have is procedural. And that's going on right now in Tallahassee. You guys heard of Killearn Country Club? Anybody know what's going on? They have 27 holes, And it was built, Klarn was like in the 1980s when I was in school, it was like Coach Bowden lives in Klarn, it was the neighborhood to be in. When I was in school, it was like, man, I've got to ride all the way out to Klarn. It was a hike, which I live 5 miles on the other side of Klarn now. But it was like the place to be. So they built 27 holes. They all at that time, actually had a pro golf tournament here at Tallahassee Open. Well, fast forward, disposable income's down. There's all kinds of other golf courses now, Golden Eagle, Summerbrook, and golf business is not really great. So the guy that owns it is trying to close 9 of the holes. The last 9 that was built, and go just down to 18. Maintenance is very expensive. And what do you think the people that live on that golf course, that live on that 9 holes, are doing? Why? Devalues their homes, living on a golf course, and he's got to have easements to get into all that property that's like behind their houses, so it's going to be a mess. But and it's in the courts. One of the people that lives on the golf course is an attorney, and one of my former students is the head pro out there and all, and it's a big mess. But it's because people have different ways of looking at that issue. The owner looks at it like it's my land. Why can't I develop and do what I want? People that live on that course go, look, you sold us this land on the fact that we were on a golf course, and now you want to change that, which hurts us. So people have different ways of looking at that. Parties in conflicts usually use 1 of 3 frames. Interest, people talk about their positions, but often what is at stake is the underlying issue. Interest, in the next module we do, we're going to talk about interest, rights, and powers. And to me, it's one of the best modules we do. Rights, people may be concerned about who's right. So what's the mechanism in our country to determine who's right? Court system, right. And does that mean you're right?
No. I mean, like, you can, but like, not 100%.
There's this billboard I saw that says just because you did it doesn't mean you're guilty. Call me now. Right?
Yeah, until you get caught, right? Well, it's interesting, and there's arbitration you can do, and I have a lawyer. I got a really good lawyer coming in during the next time too, and he'll talk about the process of mediation, which is required by Florida law, that you try to settle a case, to try to keep cases out of the courts. So there's all kinds of different ways to look at it, but interests are usually the best way, because if we can solve something, what happens when we get the courts involved? Legal fees, public knowledge. There's a winner and a loser. And is a loser generally happy? No, not really. So if we can solve interest, that's a better way of going about this. And then power. Sometimes you have to exert whose power. The best example I can think of that is a strike. If a union and a company have a disagreement, if that union goes out on strike, what are they trying to show? They have power, right? We can crush you, we can cripple your business if we go out on strike and you don't respond to our wishes. All right, so negotiators tend to argue for stock issues or concerns that are raised. So stock issue is one that comes up in every negotiation. And like back in the union deal, usually their contracts are for about 3 years. And so every 3 years they have to renegotiate a contract. And that is very time consuming. Why do you think they do 3 years? Why would you want to lock something in longer? Inflation, things change. If I'm the company and I give them the sweetheart deal, what happens if things really go south in a year and I need some concessions? The problem is unions don't give concessions very often. Once you give something to an employee, it's hard to get it back. It's almost impossible. So that's why they try to do little increments every 3 years. But one of my favorite stories, my friend, and I don't know if I think I told you about him in first class, Mr. Warren, the guy that was head of FedEx Ground, he was vice president of operations. Well, UPS, it was looking like UPS was going to go out on strike, and it was no way to avert it. So what would happen to the United States economy if UPS went out on strike?
I'm screwed, they deliver a lot of stuff.
Do you think that, like, the post office and FedEx Ground could pick up the slack, and DHL? No, UPS is the biggest carrier in the world. They have billions of packages. So what did RPS do? At the time, I think they were RPS before they were FedEx Ground. No, I think they were FedEx Ground. They went to several of the large customers that they had been eyeing and really wanted their business and said, if you guys will switch over to us now, we will guarantee that we will pick up your packages if strike happens. If you don't, strike happens, we can't help you. How's that for a strong negotiating position? So that company's now going to have to roll the dice on whether they think UPS is going out on strike or not. And he said they were able to pick off several really, really nice accounts by doing that. That's a pretty strong negotiating position, but were they in a position of power? Yeah, could you afford, can somebody that ships, that you has an Amazon or somebody, can they afford to not be able to ship the packages? And how long might the strike last? Who knows? You don't know. It depends on the strike fund. A lot of it, strikes depend on how much money the actual players have, how long can they go without getting paid. And a lot of that, unions have strike funds, but a lot of it also, these people, the union people that make a lot of money, some of them may not be living paycheck to paycheck, although stats say that, what, 65 to 70% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, something like that. So if you're living paycheck to paycheck, can you afford as a driver to be out from strike for a while? Not at all, but that's a calculated risk you would take. So each party, so that's a stock issue. Every time it comes up, wages would be a stock issue, because they talk about it every time the contract comes up. Each party attempts to make the best possible case for your position. Frames may depend on major shifts and transitions, and then multiple agenda items help shape the development. And so my notes in labor negotiations, wages, and benefits are a stock issue that come up every time. And those guys that work for UPS drivers, guys, they make a really, really good living. I want to say they make over 50 grand now. After, I know at Roadway, even years ago, after 5 weeks, after 20 years, you got 5 weeks of vacation, week of sick leave. So they're pretty lucrative jobs. So frames shape the way parties define the key issues. Both parties have frames. They're not always the same. They're controllable, usually internally. Conversations change and transform frames in a way that negotiators may not be able to predict, but may be able to control. And then certain frames are more likely than others to lead to certain types of processes, outcomes. So once again, you've got to prioritize the negotiation. And if they're different, there's less chance of having a clear conversation. If the way you frame something, the way I frame something are different, to have a good conversation, we've got to have common ground. So negotiators have a tendency to make systematic errors when they process information. They're called cognitive biases. So what's a cognitive bias? What's it? You guys know that you heard that term? You should have heard that term. What's it mean?
Does it almost go back to like perception?
Yeah, it's basically your perception of something. Where does that come from? Your life experience, right. People, you guys ever talk to somebody and they see things totally different than you do? Well, you're the same age, you're both in school. How can they see things different than you do?
Their life experience.
They've grown up differently. That's right. People say you can't imagine, and if people have been through a horrific experience in their life, then you can't put yourself in their shoes. And people that were raised differently. So it's hard, and that's why a good negotiator, patience, time, try to understand the other party. And how do you do that? By getting to know them, and we'll talk, one of the chapters, I know we get deeper into that as far as the whole process of getting to know your opponent. All right, so here's some cognitive biases. Once again, a bunch of definitions that you need to know. So, irrational escalation of commitment. A negotiator maintains commitment to a course of action when that commitment constitutes irrational behavior. And I'm going to mention it now, but we're going to go into depth on it on the next module, and you guys are going to read a story. But my baseball players are here. You guys ever heard of Matt Harrington?
Yeah.
What do you know about him?
Louisville?
Huh?
You got from Louisville?
No.
Which one?
He was drafted about 7 or 8 years ago, number 5 overall in the draft. He was offered $4 million. His agent told him he was going to get $4.9 million, so he ended up not signing. He went back and played independent ball for a year, had a subpar year. He was a pitcher. Next year, he gets drafted number 26 or either low first, top second, gets offered 1.25, turns that down because it was insulted, because he got $4 million last year, goes back and plays independent ball again, has a worse year, gets drafted way late round. The guy's changing tires at Costco now. Never made a penny. So, irrational escalation of commitment. Keep doing something over and over based on what's happened in the past, which has no relevance to the current negotiation. And we're going to get deep into that story. It's a tragedy if you're that kid. And a lot of blame to go around too, and we'll talk about that. Mythical fixed pie beliefs. Negotiations assume that all negotiations involve just a fixed thing. So what if you guys were negotiating for a job and it looked like the salary was pretty much fixed and no wiggle room? What could you do maybe to break the fixed barrier?
Performance bonus.
Incentives, exactly. If I achieve this, how about you do this? All right? Should that be at least somewhat attractive to an employer? Yeah, if you perform, should that mean? You're going to make money, right? So that's one of the things to keep in mind too. Is there any way to quantify your work such that you can put bonuses in? And so we're going to break that myth of, well, it's just about a salary.
Would you be able to negotiate those kind of terms based on past experience, or just kind of things you can talk your way into it with your employer?
I think either. I mean, if the big thing is your value to that employer, okay, and what's your value based on?
The relationships you made for them, and then what you can produce for them.
How about what you've done in the past, though? Okay, if you've been selling for another company and you've had all kinds of awards as a salesperson, does that not add value? And that's the thing. I mean, guys, if you guys sales, there's 2 or 3 areas in business that are never going away. Okay, one of them's accounting. That's why I love the accounting major. You're always going to have to keep books and financial records. And one is sales. Is sales ever going to go away as a part of our world? Does Florida State sell? Yeah, we bring students in all the time, trying to get the top students. Churches, do they sell? Yeah, trying to get people in the seats. So if you can sell, somebody can teach you the product. So that track record and sales it's a specialized gift that some people, I mean, I don't like sales. I don't like it. I wouldn't be comfortable in it. Can I do it? Absolutely. If I had to. When I owned my own business, I was a heck of a salesperson because I had to be. But it's not something I would choose to go into. But if you can do that and you have a track record, so my track record, what can I do? What can I sell? Operations. You want me to fix your place? I can do it. Okay, I had my efficiencies at my restaurant were off the charts. So yeah, you sell what your strengths are. But you also have to, the company has to value that. When you guys are going into these training programs, and a lot of companies, and I encourage that, and I like companies that have a good solid training program because it means they're committed to you because they're going to pay you for a matter of months and you're not going to contribute a whole lot. So that shows a commitment. But is there anything that differentiates you during that time? Not a lot. They're looking for 4 people. So that's just kind of the challenge. Without a lot of life experience, that's the challenge for you guys to sell yourself. What do you got to base it on? But I think it's easier once you get in an organization. If you like the organization and see opportunity, then just let me get my foot in the door and let me compete. And same thing, when I started with Roadway, it was the company was growing, which happened to be a great thing, and the people that were good moved. I mean, I moved 4 times in 7 years. That's pretty incredible to even just be given that opportunity. All right, anchoring and adjustment. The effect of the standard anchor against the subsequent adjustments. So that means, well, no, I want 4.9 million and I'm not going to adjust anything off of that. I'm not coming off. If we don't get that, we're not going to sign. That's anchoring. That's not all the time a preferred negotiation strategy. It may be based on faulty or incomplete information or misleading. I'm not a fan of anchoring. Issues, framing, and risk. Frames can lead people to seek, avoid, or be neutral about risk, decision making, and negotiation. And that's the other thing you're looking at. The companies you guys are going to be interviewing with, how solid is that company? If they're a startup and don't have a lot of history, I would want more. To me, risk has value. Ability of information. You operate when information is presented in vivid or attention-getting ways. You become central and critical in evaluating events and options. Do your homework about the companies you guys are interviewing with. That's very, very important. And it's also impressive when you show up and understand something. And it also might keep you from underselling yourself. The winner's curse. Tendency to settle quickly on an item and then subsequently feel discomfort about a win that comes too easily. And same thing, I'll go take that a step further. When you guys negotiate a deal or something, and I have a hard time not doing it, I buy a car and I keep looking at cars. Why do I do that? I've already bought the car. And I'm looking at the same car.
You want to know if you got a good deal?
I'm trying to validate whether I got a good deal or not. Well, does it matter?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. So don't get caught up. Once you make a deal, study and learn. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that, and you want to do better the next time, but don't beat yourself up. But sometimes, too, the story I told you about selling my house, how do I know that wasn't the absolute most that guy would have paid? Or anybody would have paid? You don't. Okay, anybody want to know? I'm trying to sell my Miami football tickets. You know what's happening to the price? I had an agreement like 4 weeks ago for face value, $115. Now when they changed the date, the guy can't find a room, so he backed out. So I started looking at StubHub. They were at 90 when I put them on there the other day. Last night they're down to 50.
It's because they might change the time of the game.
Might change the time of the day, and hotels are killing people because all of a sudden if you pay $115 for 4 tickets, you're at what, $460 and then $300 for a motel room. They want a 2-night minimum. It's crazy. It's for people that don't have a lot of money, it's $1,000 weekend.
Not including food.
Not including food and gas and
Hurricane coming.
hurricane coming. I mean, it's just it's terrible. So, but once again, no power in negotiating in that because there's thousands of tickets for sale. So you just basically probably be lucky to get rid of them. Start a fire with them. All right, overconfidence. Tendency of negotiators to believe that their ability to be accurate is greater than it actually is. People get in trouble by being overconfident. Got to see reality. Law of small numbers. People try to rationalize something based on a very small sample size. I see this a lot. And I see it with businesses or, well, yeah, everybody in my fraternity likes these, so I know I can sell them. Is that really a good sample size? Not necessarily. You got to do all kinds of market research. So don't get caught up on just a few people like it, so I think it's going to sell. Smaller the sample size, the greater the possibility that past lessons will be erroneously used to infer what will happen in the future, and that's not necessarily what's going to happen. Self-serving biases. People also often explain another person's behavior by making attributes either to that person or the situation, and the tendency is to overestimate the role of the personal or internal factors and underestimate the external factors. And I would tell you, you need to focus on the external factors. What's the difference in external factors and internal factors?
External is like you attribute it to the situation. Internal is you attribute it to who they are. But I just want to throw one more thing here.
Can you control internal factors?
You can.
You can. Right? Internal. Things I control. What does external mean?
Threats. I mean, if you have a certain personality type, it's going to be harder to maybe be patient if you're like.
It is, but you can still control to make decisions.
I didn't choose my DNA.
No, the genetic lottery is something that some people make a lot of money just being born and have the right genes. I don't disagree.
If you understand the external factors, you might be able to understand their goals in the negotiation.
Sure, but there's also external. Sometimes there's factors that come into play that you can't control, and that's what we mean by external. And same thing with if you guys, you may take a strategic management class or something. The whole SWOT analysis, the internal versus the external. And the external, like for a business, it's external are opportunities and threats, and those are things that are out there you don't control. The economy. You guys, do we control the economy? Is the economy important in business? When the economy is going good, is that an opportunity for us? When the economy shrinks, is that a threat? Yeah, but you don't control that. Okay? Internal things, my business, my product line, you control internal factors.
worry about you can control what you can't control.
No, you know, and I've heard that too, and I believe it, but I don't. I think there's Bill Parcells one time, he said, "I don't worry about things I can't control." So is that a smart statement?
I mean, you don't worry about it. You can study it and understand what's going on, but don't add unnecessary stress about
No,
something.
I agree with that, but don't you think you at least need to be aware of it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, you can be content with the fact that you can't control what you're supposed to account for.
Exactly, because it's still going to, if something in the environment is still going on, it's still going to happen. And let me go back to, and I've got it in my office, but I don't know if I mentioned this or not. Back, I don't know, 90s, early 90s, when I worked for Roadway, you guys ever heard of the Franklin Planner? You guys ever heard of that beast? No? Okay, so it was like this, I've got it, I'm trying to remember to bring it to class. It was this leather-bound book about the size of a Bible. If you were really cool, it had a zipper and leather case, and you carried it around with you. And so you open it up, and it's got October's calendar on there, 30 days. You have notes on it. Then you flip to the actual day that has detailed notes on it. So that was America's executives' way of keeping up with your calendar and your time. You guys see anybody? Obviously you don't. You guys have never heard of that. Okay? That company sold a lot of those one year.
My dad uses something similar to that.
Okay. Still?
Yeah, similar.
Is he aware of technology?
He's an old man. He loves it for being able to write down and flip through the actual pages.
Yeah, so what happened? Anybody know what happened to the Franklin Planner? Anybody know what knocked them out? Wasn't the iPhone.
Palm Pilot.
The Palm Pilot. You guys remember that beast? No?
Yeah.
It was the first, it was called a PDA, a personal, help me out here, personal diary something. So it had a little styptic pencil, and this had actually the calendar. You would hit the date with your pencil and write all your stuff in there. So the really cool execs went to the Palm Pilot.
Wait, I got it. It's personal digital assistant.
There you go. Okay, thanks. Personal digital assistant. All right, you guys see any Palm Pilots anymore?
My dad used to have one, and then after about a year, he stopped using it.
He kept losing the stylus.
But then now we have the iPhone. You guys got notes and calendars and everything on the iPhone? Yeah, so that's all. What I'm talking about, the external environment. Palm needed to be aware of what was going on, even though they couldn't control it. If I'm not aware of it, it can wreck your business, and that's what I'm saying. You guys got it. Even you guys in simple little businesses, what's out there that can crush my business? What's going to happen too? Like doorstep delivery and penny delivery and all those places. Would you like to be one of those businesses right now? What's going to happen? Who's going to crush them? Uber Eats. The business model is so much better. You have drivers all the way out. What's the problem with doorstep delivery and all? They got to drive to a place, pick up the food, and then drive to your place. Uber has people in the neighborhood.
Uber Eats isn't going to cost us a penny. You know? I don't know. I think
But at some point, people are willing to pay for a certain level of quality and speed. You guys ever pay more? You ever ship something in 2 days instead of letting it come standard mail? No? Well, there's times when I have had to overnight something just because it was worth a lot more money. The outcome of me not getting it there on time was worth more to me than that $30 or $40 food.
Plus, Uber kind of has more capital to get better accounts and restaurants.
And they have name recognition. People already have the app downloaded on their phone. So I'm saying there's things that happen, and that's the challenge of business. It's not good enough anymore just to be good. There's all kinds of creative people and stuff that's happening, and you got to be aware of it. Endowment effect, the tendency to overvalue something you own or believe you possess. Any of you guys got parents or grandparents that got old china or something that they want you to have? And I won't sell it till something happens to Mom, but just because it belonged to Aunt Minnie, it doesn't really have a whole lot of value to me. But to her, it's like the most precious thing in the world. So we overvalue our stuff because it's our stuff. All right, ignoring others' cognitions. Negotiators don't bother to ask about the other party's perceptions and thoughts. Once again, that's getting to know people. Ask questions, probing questions. Information will allow you to make better decisions. It leaves them to work with incomplete information, produce faulty results. Information, guys, is power. So the best advice negotiators can follow is be aware of the negative aspects of your biases. What are they based on? How do they affect the negotiation and the other party? And discuss them in a structured manner with the team or with counterparts. And once again, you guys, we've had some groups that form businesses and end up selling. Then it becomes a whole nother dynamic. What if everybody in the team doesn't agree on the direction you want to go? You guys thought about that, you guys that are doing team businesses? What happens at the end of the year if two want to keep going and one doesn't? Is there value in buying out that person, or do they just walk away and leave their part, or all kinds of different dynamics that happen. All right, so reactive devaluation. Process of devaluing the other party's concessions simply because the other party made them. So what's that tell us? It leads negotiators to minimize the magnitude of a concession. Oh, you're just doing that to try to be nice, but I know you're really not. Lead to reduced willingness to respond with a concession of equal size. Got to be minimized by maintaining a more objective view, and sometimes it can lead motivation to seek even more concession, even more once a concession has been made. So basically, you devalue that other person, what they're doing, just because it's that other person. Generally, for that to happen, you would have to have a negative view of that other person. If you're dealing with somebody and you trust them, then you're not going to have, this should not happen. All right, emotions, negotiations cause both positive and negative emotions. Positive emotions generally have positive consequences. They're more likely to lead a more integrated process and a positive attitude from the other side. And once again, I would always try to start with a positive negotiation, an integrated negotiation. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes things change also. So what aspects of the can lead us to positives if we feel like we're treated fairly? You guys ever been in a situation where you didn't like the outcome, but you couldn't really argue because you were treated fairly? Is the process important? You ever been railroaded? Like something happened and you didn't get a fair shake? Yeah, that's the worst feeling in the world, and it happens. So the process can be important also. Positive feelings from a favorable social comparisons, and that says individual satisfaction after negotiation is higher when the outcomes compare favorably to others. So you guys get a job. What do you guys think is going to be a good, for your age, coming out of college, what's a good salary?
Depends where you live.
Yeah, but it doesn't. I know people, a couple of young ladies that I had a negotiation a couple of years ago, New York City, $44,000.
And you survived?
Poverty level.
Yeah.
And both of them came and asked me, how can I negotiate a higher salary? Can't. It was Ross's, Dress for Less, and Macy's. And they are hiring people, and they got plenty of people that want those jobs. So, yeah.
Never mind.
So my suggestion to both of them, well, what do? How do you live on $44,000 in New York City?
Live in New Jersey.
You live in Jersey or Brooklyn, and you get an apartment for two that you put 4 people in, and it's...
New Jersey still has income tax.
Yeah, it's not just the taxes, just the living, apartment rent and everything. But they do give you a subway pass that's unlimited, so you can commute downtown where the job is. There's no way you can live down there. My only suggestion was to sit down with the HR person and ask them to help you do a budget. So why would that be helpful?
Because we're sure that it realistically can't budget that amount of money to live off of.
Possibly, yeah. Or if you can do that, let them show you how you got to do it. But think about $44,000 in New York City. But that's what they were offering, and if people are lined up for those jobs, so what's the carrot there? Well, in 3 years, we're going to kick you out. You got a chance to do sales, and you can make 70 or more. That's the only way. If I thought I was going to be making 40 for a long time, I wouldn't take that job. But they do dangle that carrot that if you're good, you're going to have some opportunity. But also, if you don't want it, it's not negotiable. So getting a favorable feeling, if you came out, and I know I had a young man last semester that went, it's not a very glamorous glamorous industries, it's large equipment rentals, but he started at $50,000. So that would be a positive feeling from a favorable social comparison. Yeah, I'm not in a glamorous industry, but I'm making more money than people who are working for Macy's and wear nice clothes and everything, and I'm out wearing steel-toe boots. Same thing, when I worked at Roadway, there was a lot of my friends that would not have taken that job. Because, guys, I was walking a loading dock.
What is Roadway? You mentioned.
It's a Fortune 500 company. It's Yellow Roadway, YRC now, but it's a LTL trucking company. So you guys, you know the big trucks on the road?
Yeah.
So if in Tallahassee, if there's a manufacturer here that makes lampshades, well, we would pick up those lampshades and take them to New Jersey. So we had the consolidation process where we sent everything to Valdosta, and we loaded up a truck for New Jersey, one for Texas. So it was my first job, my hours, 7 days on, 7 days off. Could be noon to midnight, could be midnight to noon. You guys want to work that?
The pay's good.
Paid very well.
After that.
Here's the thing, in most jobs, how many of you guys think you're going to work a 40-hour week? Okay, good luck.
I'm gonna work a 60-hour week.
I've never worked a 40-hour week. Never, ever, ever. Oh, you can go to work for the state. Work 40 hours, you go to work for the state. My minimum requirement in Roadway is 55 hours a week. So when you frame it like that, why not work 7 days in a row, and then I only work 6 months out of the year. If I frame it like that, if you're getting home working a 10, 11-hour day, or 10-hour day, why not just work 2 more hours and then get a whole week off? Young, single, had money, you traveled, went to Jamaica, took trips, Kentucky Derby, we were going all over the place because we had a week off every week. It wasn't bad. Now, married family, don't think I would like that. There's every other weekend you work. Christmas, I remember my first Christmas, couldn't go home. We were opening up the day after Christmas. That sucked. But making good money. It had a favorable social comparison. I was making a lot more money than a lot of my friends. So you just got to evaluate it like that. All right, negative emotions generally have negative consequences. Lead parties to define the situation as competitive, undermine a negotiator's ability to analyze accurately, because once he gets competitive, we don't look for facts anymore. We're just looking for our side. Lead parties to escalate the conflict, retaliate, and not all negative emotions have the same effect. So once again, I would always try to have a integrated negotiation. There's times you can't. It's nothing you can do. So aspects of the negative process can result from a competitive mindset. Absolutely. From an impasse, you want this, I want this, neither one's willing to give, and may result from the prospect at the beginning of the negotiation. And effects of positive and negative. Positive feelings can generate negative. Negative can elicit beneficial outcomes. So no real value in all of that. Just summing it up though, I think you always ought to try and start with a positive, any kind of positive aspect that you can. Look for what you have in common. How can we solve interest? And then kind of let it play from there. I rarely ever start in a distributive process. Even buying a car, there's no reason not to be nice and try to work that, play that angle. But at the end, do we really care about a relationship? Not really. All right, any questions? All right, very good. See you.